All right, so we're going to jump back in. This is Fallacies and Bias Part 2, the bias revenge. There will be no Part 3, revenge of the paradox. But open with a bad joke. That way you can only do better. That's a little public speaking tip for all you aspiring speakers out there. You can bore your audience, but ride that line between awkward and interesting. You get a lot of mileage out of that, and it's way easier to hit that. A lot of people live in that zone, right? Between awkward and interesting. So if you can tap into that, you can coast for quite a time. That is the public speaker's version of cruise control. That's a free pro tip right there. But anyways, we're going back to fallacies and bias. So a fallacy, if I had to sum that up using the language of this course, that would be improper mathematical construction. Okay, it's dividing by zero. It's putting 3 plus signs next to each other and expecting it to do something. It's the square root of a negative number without defining what that means. You're saying pi is equal to 3. Like, it just is bad. It's bad structure. That's a fallacy. A bias is a little different. That's incomplete information. So if that was like a bias, for example, if I was using an integral which has lower and upper limits, normally an integral is measured from a start point to an end point. 0 to infinity, minus infinity to infinity are popular choices for integral limits. So a bias would be to say this integral is only valid at infinity. That's a bias. This is only valid when it's measured at 0. And it can't be anything else. So a bias is like an improper limit. And the ignorance, as a verb, really, meaning the ignorance, the active ignoring of additional equally valid measurements that are part of that larger function. Meaning if your point touches into a larger truth, that larger truth can be used in other situations to test if that larger truth is valid. And to deny that test is to declare a bias. It's a denial of measurement. It's bias. So it's not putting a number in the equation. That's bias. So let's, depending if you're doing algebra, arithmetic, or calculus, there's 3 different ways to explain it. All right, so now we're going to go in. We're working on fallacies right now. The last one,
in your talking of bias, it seems as if you're talking about its application.
yeah, like I'm talking about it as a causal entity with a dimension in time, a dimension of behavior in time.
And I think that's important to note because I think most people don't. And generally
it's not
speaking,
a judgment or a morality
there you go.
thing. That's zero association. The
difference from my perspective is the perspectives, I suppose. As opposed to analyzing it from one's own perspective of one's own bias, we are looking at it as a third-party observer to the mental faculties and their applications of expression towards other perspectives. So I think that's an important, distinction to have in there so that we're not just, because it's the same word, but we aren't using it in casual conversation. We're using it in philosophy or sociology or mental, whatever you want to call this subject. We're using it in the study of we.
So the reason that I refer to it very quickly in terms of measurement and not its traditional words is because the idea of measurement does, I believe, eclipse every topic when this is covered. So the limits of measurement change. The point of reference changes, but there is always a comparative structure with boundaries around it because that is the fundamental nature of how reality and information and ideas work, which we covered in a different one. So I can take that concept And in math, they call this reassigning a variable. You take a complicated thing, which you know what it is, and you say it's equal to A. And then you can move A around, even though it's doing all this crazy stuff, as long as you don't break any rules, you can translate and transpose it however you want. And that's the meta idea behind communication as a measurement system, which is why fallacies and biases are so powerful, because they are the rulers and the knives. So that's back in faulty no, the last one, the fallacy of many questions. This is the one we left off on last time, and it was the one that I had shared with Tony. We were still waiting for an answer. Like the example was, how many times have you been caught masturbating in the closet? And to which he said none. To which I responded, it was a very good hiding place, which is the fallacy of many questions. It's the loaded question. It's the, when are you going to stop beating your wife, today or tomorrow? Like, wait a minute, we skipped some steps here. You're trying to shoehorn a fact into a question. That's a no-no. That's the fallacy of many questions. That's getting your order of operations confused in mathematics. That's not multiplying by the parenthesis before you add what's inside. That's the fallacy of many questions. Next one, faulty generalization. So this is reaching a conclusion from a weak premise. It's like ways to explain why you were wrong. Like accident, that's the first example of faulty generalization. So an expectation to a generalization is ignored. So you ignore the thing that makes you wrong. It's just an accident, freak of nature. Okay, fine. Now, after that wears out, because it does, the next argument is the no true Scotsman, which now you say, well, that's not true when you really look at who the audience is. So there's an argument that is made that's general. Somebody says, well, it cuts off this whole portion of society. They don't see it this way. And then another person says, well, that portion of society isn't the one we were talking about. You hear about that. You see that used quite a bit near elections about what Americans would do. The definition of American and Democrat and Republican very quickly becomes a no true Scotsman type situation. So we're going to leave it at that. Cherry picking. That one's easy. You just pick the things that make you look right and you ignore the things that make you look wrong. And if you have a lot of money, you get a court order and say that things that might make you look wrong shouldn't be revealed for 75 years. But then someone else comes and puts a freedom of information on that and gets it released. And then, well, your cherry picking comes to light, and then your stock price goes down. Now, this is all hypothetical because I don't think we can point to any examples in recent history where a pharmaceutical company would ever stoop to the malfeasant practice of underscoring risks of a product in favor of profits. It just doesn't happen. So we know our senators are clean and then they represent our interests fairly. And none of them are thinking about the jobs that they get after they're out of office, because that wouldn't be what a good leader would do for this country. So I'm going to continue supporting my system and giving it 100% of the respect that it deserves. And I think you should do the same. Moving on, nutpicking. That one's funny. That's using individual cases of data that falsify a particular position while ignoring related cases or data that may support that position. Tony wants me to use more relevant culture examples. Unarmed Black people shootings is nutpicking. And I hate it because it does so much more damage than it furthers any cause. When you look at CDC statistics by percentage versus media coverage by hour, it's nutpicking. It's the ratio that makes it nutpicking, not the act itself or the validity of what the situations are. Yes, they happen. Yes, they're explored deeply and in detail. However, they are not representative of the sample size, and the nutpicking happens when data is presented from the sources that are also sourcing the overall comparison to put it in relevance. It's like, don't put the Statue of Liberty next to my marble statue of David. That's nutpicking. You don't get rid of the marble statue of David. Oh no, you blow up the Statue of Liberty. That's the nutpicking. And it takes a bunch of nuts, but they do pick. And if they have enough money, people listen. So be careful. It's a very real bias, and people with money use it. They purchase it. It is a commodity. You have to find where it's a commodity, but it is. It's valuable. Why? Because it's bad math that people ignore. And you know who's good at making money on bad math? Smart people. And do you know who's good at making lots of money on bad math and not telling other people about it? Bad people. So you have bad people who are smart, who are using nutpicking to get rich. They're not bothered by it because we say it's okay, because we don't vote people out of office for taking jobs after they leave, or taking checks because they vote for the letter of the alphabet we want to, and we can't kneecap our own team, which is a great way to say that if everybody has one team or the other that they're loyal to, then none of them are ever going to kneecap their own team and cut off the teeth that feeds both of them. But that's a different kind of fallacy and bias. So we'll cover that later. Survivorship bias. That's where you start to, another term for that is acceptable losses. Like if I cut out, what was it, Stalin? Was it Stalin who said they would rather, someone who followed Stalin said they would rather cut out the tongues of 1,000 innocent men than to risk one guilty man being able to speak against their leader. That's survivorship bias. You say the cost doesn't matter because I get the thing I want. Or if say that you're having babies and I don't know, you have 10 babies and they all make it 2 months and then one of them makes it. Well, that's a survivorship bias that maybe you should think about. Either way, like keep going or don't. Treasure what you get, obviously, no matter what. It's not like you can change what you got. Next one, false analogy. An argument by analogy where the analogy used is poorly suited. That would be like me taking a weather balloon and flying it into the sun. Hasty generalization. Yeah, that just, well, you know what it's like. Just you go too fast. We're gonna move on. Inductive fallacy, a more general name for a class of fallacies, including hasty generalization and its relatives. I like how these have a family tree, and they do. The fallacy of induction happens when a conclusion is drawn from premises that only lightly support it. So the last 3 people who came through this door had red shirts on. That means that people who have red shirts on are going to come through this door a lot more. That's inductive that's a inductive fallacy. Misleading vividness. Yeah, that's where you get real teary-eyed. You look intensely into the camera. Maybe you make a comment about your wife's honor. You wind up and you just really go for it to stress the relevance of that moment when ratings are at their lowest point. This is all hypothetical, by the way. Ratings are at their lowest point they've been in 10 years. That would be a hypothetical example of misleading vividness in the public display, like misleading vividness as a weapon. That's what that would look like. People call that a staged event. Overwhelming expectation. Well, yeah, that's, you pick the one that's the most exciting. Good for you, I guess, but you got to do a little better than that. Like, it's good to be excited, but you gotta, sometimes the simple things are the best. Like if you're looking in the Bible, for an example, there was a prophet that went to, I think it was Elijah or Elisha, one of the Eli guys. And the guy says, I got leprosy. What do I have to do to get clean? And he says, go wash in the Jordan River 7 times. And the guy is like, you mean I got to go like a 1/4 mile down the road and bathe in this mud river? Because Jordan River is a muddy river. And then Elijah, or the Eli guy, says, well, would you have felt better if I told you to go do this great thing? then would it have made more to you? So it is a disproportionate value to that which is more significant subjectively. Oh, that's more exciting. I want it to be that. Okay, well, good. Yes. Thought terminating cliche. That's kind of where you just kind of mosey on off into the sunset and you change topics, right? Like somebody gives you a loaded question and you don't want to answer it and you say, well, I don't want to open up that can of worms right now because we've got this other thing coming along. And so we're going to put that up on the shelf and save it for another day. That's a thought terminating cliche. That's worse than a straw man. You didn't even make an argument to attack. You canned it and put it on the shelf. I guess the one hand it's preserved, but it's not functioning. Like it's not scaring anything. Probably unlabeled. Get me started on pasteurization. Probably rancid inside. Anyways, questionable cause. So this is the questionable cause is a general error with like a lot of examples we're going to go to, and it's usually causation and correlation type things where you say it is or it isn't a thing based on the effect. It gets easier to explain when we go into the little ones. I'm not reading the Latin because I have a fear that I will be audio edited, and that's just too much of low-hanging fruit for that. So the Latin translation is with this, therefore, because of this. It's correlation implies causation. Like and some of these can look similar from different angles. So I can use the red shirt example again. You could say everybody has a red shirt on the left side of this building. That means there's a football game going on. Like, what? What? Maybe. You could ask them. Maybe. Do you have a flyer? If you're just guessing, you have no proof. The next one is after this, therefore because of this. So that's assuming like X happened, then Y happened, or X caused Y. So if I drop this clip and Tony has a fart, I have a new superpower. Like every time I drop this clip, no matter where Tony is, then he's gonna fart. So what I'm gonna do is open up, and I'm apologize for this, Tony, because this is the fastest way both of us can get our goals, is I'm going to get you the softest toilet paper I can, and then find a machine that drops these at high speeds and then capture that methane and start a natural gas company. So I apologize for the volume that this power is going to do, but we're gonna give the world free energy, man. You got to take one for the team.
I'd be willing.
I went so far off the rails. That happens sometimes. My own nonsense is like a little. It's like a little midget that is like on my back all the time, and it looks for things, and it's fun. But every once in a while, for no reason, it just puts its hands around my neck and brings me down, which is when I go off on those nonsense. It's like you can see the blood leaving, the blood oxygen level in my brain dropping as the metaphor gets sillier and sillier, and then I just can't even keep it going anymore. All right, fallacy of the single cause. It assumes that there's one cause. Yeah. If we only don't do that, like then that won't happen. Well, what about all this other stuff? Like, oh, great one. The guns question. Oh, if we just had tougher gun control, then that wouldn't happen. It's cute. It's optimistic. It's not real. As long as people don't like each other and they don't talk about it, and for the most part are able to get away with it enough, there will be violence in exchange for personal gain. You need to remove the reward so completely. And that doesn't mean to punish, it means remove the reward of such a thing that it is just not advantageous compared to all of these other things that you could choose. It needs to be a better choice. And it needs to be so obvious for so many reasons. That's the only thing that's going to make that stick, my opinion.
I feel like I call that one out more than others
Yeah.
because it allows me to build on the other person's knowledge usually. Casual oversimplification is just for me saying, well, yeah, that, and then some other stuff too. And they don't have to take my other stuff too, because they have
Tack a
the
little
that.
yes and on there. You
They're
can be a
already,
senator, like
yeah.
they call that a rider on a bill. I'll vote for your bill if you let me put this little rider on it that says this is true. That's a good mental strategy, actually, if you're trying to make progress with someone over time, especially if they don't know that you're agreeing to the same thing over and over again because it's the only thing they care about, and you're asking for little tiny different things, which over time make something way cooler than anything they've made for themselves, which is how you get them to build a machine that breaks their own reality. Because you can't do it, they have to be the one to do it. And once they have the machine, they're going to flip the button. You don't got to do anything else at all. And they'll ride the roller coaster at their own pace because it's what they want to do. And they just need to find a smooth way off. So if they have all the pieces, they'll put them together if they're the ones that grab them, because then they have the value, the false value there. The gambler's fallacy. So that's like saying that if I flip a coin 10 times, those flips have anything to do with the future. And that's really not how coin flipping works, and probability is really not how coin flipping works when you get deeply into enough. So we're going to ignore that physics and math make it able to perfectly flip a coin with 0% margin of error and move on. Magical thinking, fallacious attribution of causal relationships between actions and events. So that's like saying I did this dance and it rained. We sacrificed to these virgins and we had good crops that year. Yeah, some big man in the sky is going to reward our ritual. And hey, if there is one God up there and one group of people does have the right ritual, more on them, because yeah, like go for it, right? Like you can't miss. You did it. You can't do worse than God. So good job. Regression fallacy ascribes cause where none exists.
Wait. Going
What?
back up to
Okay.
magical thinking.
Yes.
In the end, it says in psychology refers to an irrational belief that thoughts by themselves can affect the world, or that thinking something corresponds with doing it.
That's
Now that to me just seems like the law of
that's a
attraction.
bias. That's why I didn't read it.
That's why I made you go back.
So Wikipedia is crowdsourced. So, and it's openly checked. So a lot of this stuff gets checked up on by other people who know about it and are interested. So it, for the most part, is pretty accurate. But every once in a while, somebody slips one of those like irrational belief. Like, no, not always. And that's where you can tell. Like that's why I was measuring it. It was measuring belief as irrational with a fixed point. It was creating. It was a fallacy, so I ignored it. It was only looking at one point of a total measurement, and what it was trying to say was not even that good of a point. So, regression fallacy ascribes cause where none exists. Yeah, it's another one of those where you don't account for natural changes in the state of a thing and say, oh, this happened because of that. Sometimes you just can't pin it down. It's almost like the JFK magic bullet thing. Too much information is gone, at least for the casual. Like if I wanted to get into that hobby, everything that would really make a difference is long gone. I could look at what other people found and maybe put something together they haven't, maybe, but no, too many people have been at that for too long. If it was there, someone would have found it. It's just gone. And that's where you see the crazy theories start to crop up to try and bridge that gap because you can't let it go. Let's see. Sociologist fallacy, fallacious assumption that observed correlations between social variables and phenotypes. Geez, what a mouthy way to say it's not right to say that Asian people drive slow, or that they're good at math, or that they have tiny penises. I don't know why I keep picking on them, but what's the point of going after more than one group? Like, you want me to spread that around? That's not very nice. they're also a very humor-loving people, very polite too. Least likely to get your ass kicked by an Asian. However, most likely to get your ass beat by an Asian who does fight you. Which is also a stereotype. It's another bias. It's another example of the sociologist's fallacy. So the educated users and viewers of this, I need you to file this away, that many of these things I demonstrate by example. So make sure you properly bound the measurement about whatever correlation you make between action and consequence, because the goal is demonstration through humor. So yes, you can talk about that all you want, as long as you are referencing the sociologist's fallacy, because that is what it is about and nothing more. I've said too much. Relevance fallacies. I like this one because you're running into it all the time. This is like the number one most common fallacy you're going to run into, especially online. Appeal to the stone. Dismissing a claim as absurd without demonstrating proof for its absurdity. Another word for that is that's not relevant. Why? It's just not. I don't think it is.
I would say that's saying it's just not true, but we can always click on it to go a little deeper. The appeal to the stone seems to be just not an appeal without base, but a way to dismiss something by saying it has no base.
How
without any proof of it.
I see. So you're looking for a single reaction. I was measuring an interaction.
Well, it says dismissing a claim as absurd. So
yeah.
I would see it as, like this.
So I guess
claim, or if someone said, the sun's hot, I could refute that by, or if they say the sun's a ball of gas, I can say, oh, that's just crazy, and no proof. And I think that'd be appealing to the stone.
Oh, see, so what I was doing was, you need one more. I hate to do this. Well, agree or don't. There's a missing point of measurement in that either or. Like there needs to be a confirmation of your response to verify what direction your response has put them in. So you need to get a confirmation that what you attempted to do was actually done. Like the appeal to stone, a claim as absurd without demonstrating proof for its absurdity. I could make a claim. Somebody could say that literally that's absurd. However, they still haven't demonstrated a lack of intent to prove its absurdity. They just felt an unwillingness to at that time. So to verify that, you would need a request for proof of its absurdity. And then you would know if it's an appeal to stone or not, because they have either given you the explanation and therefore shown it is not, or they will say, no, I don't want to prove it's absurd, it just is. And then you have your proof. So
I went to the page and I got that example from the page. Infectious diseases are caused by tiny organisms that are not visible to the unaided eyesight. Speaker B, that's not true. Speaker A, why isn't that true? Speaker B, it's obviously ridiculous.
Yep. So yeah, they got it.
Just saying no backing at all. Just saying it is.
Yep. Yep. As long as there's a doubling down of that and it's not an expression, it's ruled out as a turn of phrase, then you have the minimum stability. I mean, you could guess right. Sure. More has been done on less. But if you are a stickler for measurement and you want to know that would be the way to confirm. Argument from ignorance. Assuming a claim is true because it has not been or cannot be proven false, or vice versa. That's the whole atheism, theism thing in a bottle. I don't believe that atheism requires faith and belief that there is no God. I don't believe that there's reason to question God. I can prove my faith is right. I can prove your faith is wrong. Those are all arguments from ignorance. They all rely on things you can't prove because belief is what they're debating. They're mismatching units. It's incompatible. Belief and faith are they're opposite ends of the same spectrum. So yeah, you can't you can't use one to define the other that way. Saying one is equal to one. Yeah, no shit. What have you done for me lately? You got one. You know what's one? You. You are one. Great job. You made Descartes without him or yourself. Argument from repetition. Well, that one I love. We should go to Mount Splashmore because it's fun, but it's too much money. We should go to Mount Splashmore because it's fun. We just don't have that. We should go to Mount Splashmore because it's too fun. Can we go to Mount Splashmore? Can we go to Mount Splashmore? Can we go to Mount Splashmore? Tony, can we go to Mount Splashmore? Can we go to Mount Splashmore? Argument from repetition. You just wear them down. Argument from silence, assuming a claim is true based on the absence of textual or spoken evidence from an authoritative source. Nobody told me it was wrong.
I think important part of an argument from repetition is the conclusion part of it, though. Not just the question, not just the argument, but actually saying that,
oh yeah,
because nobody wants to talk about it anymore, then it is true. I think that's a core nugget of it.
That's a good catch. If I wasn't so caught up in my own bit, I would have included the health benefits of going to Mount Splashmore in every repetition, because that is the full measurement of that. So, well, good job. You're starting to use these. You're deadly. You're deadly, Tony. You're going to be a double threat pretty soon. So I'll have to get up to a quintuple threat so I can stay ahead, because my moves are half as big as yours. So if I'm a quintuple threat and you're a double threat, I'm really only half a step ahead. The argument from silence. Assuming that a claim is true based on the absence of textual or spoken evidence from an authoritative source. That's these people didn't say that, so I don't believe you. This thing is an unsafe practice when it comes to preventing the spread of COVID. But the CDC didn't say it. But what about these doctors over here? No, they're not the right doctors. These are the official doctors. It's having but you're not interacting with those people, and you're filling in the blank for what they haven't given you. That's the argument from silence. You assume a truth from nothing by saying, if something were true, there would be something. So because there's nothing, there's not. It's two fallacies that work together. It's just a bad assumption, correlation without causation, and then it's the if A then B, if B then A. So it's just, these things work together. Irrelevant conclusion, an argument that may be itself valid, but does not address the issue in question. That's a tricky one, because sometimes one person will think another person is missing the point, and they are the one missing the larger point, and vice versa. Somebody may be giving you a generalization, and you may be trying to explain to them that yes, their sacred generalization can actually be explained as a generalization of generalizations, which is even easier to understand than that, and perfectly includes his entire idea, but 12 other ideas as well. That is the missing the point danger. Yes, you are missing the point, but are you missing the idea? Which I don't agree too much with the singling out does not address the issue in question, because neither one of the people who were engaged in that conversation, assuming a two-person interactive, have verified what the issue is yet, because that doesn't happen before, this doesn't happen when two people have agreed on a single issue, because it is literally saying this is what happens when people disagree that they're talking about the same issue. So all they know is that they're not communicating. They don't know which one of them is missing the point by making which argument. They both think the other person is missing the point. Why? Because they get to be the hero of their story and the other person is slow. And because they're not dead yet, and their way they've lived life has worked for them up to this point. But you forget the other person isn't dead either, and that person's disagreeing with you. So is one of you going to explode once you find out which one of you is wrong? That's the yeah, it's not, that's a nonsense fallacy, unless you have information that makes committing that fallacy irrelevant. Like you could use it to study an example of that, but it would be very difficult to be aware of it and to commit it at the same time because of just the conflicting nature of the definitions itself. Next one, red herring fallacies. This is where somebody intentionally misleads. Okay, it's throwing someone off the trail. It's changing the topic in a way that avoids that, which does not. So there's a difference. Changing the topic, people say that's good or bad. Why don't you just get to the point? Changing the topic has potential. Are you changing it to understand or are you changing it to avoid? That is the measurement. That is the measurement for when someone is missing the point or when someone is trying to make a discovery. Somebody is avoiding the measurement, changing the topic to avoid a thing. That's a fallacy. That's bad. It's usually dishonest, or if not dishonest, it's too honest for them to handle. Is a different way of saying. If it's not intentionally dishonest, it is a part of themselves they are not capable of being honest with at that moment, and they need to avoid it. And so they'll do anything and say anything because, well, when people are terrified of their own thoughts, they do stupid things to get away from it because they don't realize running on a Mobius strip takes you right back to where you were. Not till they hit rock bottom. Then something's got to change. But we're going to go to the attacks now. Ad hominem, attacking the arguer instead of the argument. Wow. There's a bunch of ways to do that. The circumstantial one is to say that your situation, it benefits you, therefore we can't trust you. Well, if I'm doing a thing and it doesn't benefit me and everyone else that's involved, I'm not doing it right. But that's the measurement. That's why, oh, you're benefiting. You're selfish. That in and of itself is an example of a bias against success. A bias against, benefit. Why? Because everyone doesn't get the same benefit. So what do? Make everybody worse? No. No, stop it. You make people better so that they can help people next to them. Duh. What are we going to do? Salt the earth so that nothing can ever grow there again? Nonsense. But there's nonsense people out there who think that's great. Usually those are the people who are salty. And they themselves would be a much better fertilizer than their tears. But they keep going and destroying the land with their ravenous hunger, I guess. The poisoning the well. You go spread a bunch of rumors about somebody and say that he's got a big mouth and likes to grab women by the pussy. That say that he's inappropriate. Say that he makes fun of disabled people. That's poisoning the well. It doesn't matter what the math says on the paper, what the spreadsheets say, what the books say, what the companies say, what the country says in terms of how we measure success, other than how people are talking at the moment. That's poisoning the well. No, that guy's awful. You can't believe him. Very effective. Which is why people do it. Which is why people are sick, because it's poison. But you can't get people to do what you want if they're not sick, because people do things when they're in pain. And healthy people aren't in pain all the time. So think about that the next time you feel mad watching the news, or you see a rally that's getting a lot of attention, or you see something on fire. Happy people don't do that. Why aren't we doing things to make us happy in the news? Are those people your friends telling you the truth? You're still going to vote for them? If you're still going to vote for them, go fuck yourself. But I can only say that if you agree with me at the same time, because I have to say that my view is incompatible with that behavior. So you can, of course, unfuck yourself and not agree that I'm right. I'll take that. You just can't pretend both things are happening at the same time. If you are a hardcore Democrat or Republican, we do not see eye to eye on anything. And that's not that I don't see eye to eye with you. It's that you are spinning around and can only see half of what's going on. And I don't like that because it gives me vertigo, mental vertigo. It's very disorienting. Half of me is missing. Appeal to motive. Yeah. Oh, you're just a bad person. You're trying to trick me. I'm not going to listen to you because you're dishonest. So you'll see appeal to motive when people run out of their logical arguments against you. Like if you're any sort of mental martial artist and you even learn the basics of block, like if you learned the first mental martial art, which is circular reasoning, which is you get circular reasoning, you give circular reasoning back. If you do that and learn that, most people will eventually just degenerate to questioning your motives because they can't, well, because they have to, because they're doing it too and they don't see that they're doing it. If they understood it, they would be able to recognize it when it happened to them. So
I actually like that.
What's that?
I go for that. So I actually like that. I go for that sometimes. To me, that's enough. To me, when somebody questions my motives, that means that they know I'm right. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like we can talk about the motives if you want. I can be evil if you want, as long as I'm right. Kind of like when you said, in a hypothetical universe, I could see how that could work. And I'm like, cool. I thought we were discussing everything hypothetically. Great.
Oh, I love this one. The tone policing. You haven't had the proper respect for these people's rights. Therefore, you can't talk at all. What have you done in your community to raise awareness for blank? I'm fucking digging a well here. I raised the ground, not awareness. What do you mean I need to do this and this before you're going to say my well is a good idea? No, you just don't. You're not right. You're not a good fit. You need to say
this. It sounds like poisoning the well more of.
It's more of a, you need to toe the party line. That's tone policing. You don't have the right hat on. You don't have the right button on your shirt. You don't have the right banner on your Facebook profile. You don't have the right hashtag on your posts. That's tone policing.
The example that Wikipedia gives talks about women and talks about how a lot of times people discredit women by just calling them emotional. Like, oh, she's yelling about it. She's, whatever. So we shouldn't listen to her, or she's wrong, when actually she's right.
The women that I respect the most are the ones who don't get emotional for being called emotional. And they power through it and succeed on the realm of communication, because men get called emotional all the time, but there's different words for it. You have bad judgment. You're not thinking clearly. That is an emotional attack to men because they pride themselves on logic when you're using these gendered stereotypes. So that to me is, yes, should you recognize when someone is being unfairly targeted? Of course. However, you can't glorify an ineffective response at the same time, because all that does is create a game where the outcome is one-sided. And the people playing that game will use that knowledge to their advantage. If you think it doesn't come into play that this perception exists, why don't we put a woman speaker up there? They're not going to say this to a woman. That has nothing to do with the truth of an argument. That has everything to do with trying to influence. And that's just one example. And I could make an example in the other direction where you would say, well, we have to say this speech. Why don't we put a really, really old guy up there? And he's going to be talking really slow. And it's important, but people aren't going to be able to hang in there because Mr. Magoo takes 10 minutes to get out one sentence. All of the words are true. The tone is abused and used. So recognize this as a useful key. All right, it's a key and a lock. There are ways to bypass the tone policing, which is a non-validation. Don't say anything bad next to them or the things they care about, and you won't have to agree with them. That's how you get rid of tone policing. Well, how do you feel about this or that? I just try to keep that separate from my personal life. You understand. I think you're doing a good job, though. I believe in what you're doing. I think everybody should do what they think is right. Done. No more tone policing. You get caught with tone policing when you respond with tone policing. You're both tone police. It's a gang war. You're neither of you are police. You're thugs. Police is just a heroic backdrop to put on this to give it some damn significance. No, you're fighting. You're fighting over vocabulary. That's tone policing. A specific tone.
I was gonna say tone policing is similar to grammatical policing.
Yeah. Yeah, great. You know how to use a dictionary. Good job. Let's move on to this. The words, yes, the dictionaries are for words and they have certain meanings. Now, can we get to the ideas behind these words? And am I going to have to limit the words I use to your vocabulary, or can I use the words that I know are true that you're using wrong without you understanding what's going on? That's communication then, isn't it? Browbeating someone over the head with a book full of definitions. Or we could do it my way, which is to try and understand each other. I hate it that I have to be better at everyone than being assholes at what they're an asshole at before they will do things a good way. But I'm a natural competitor. And I only play the games people will play with me. But I have nice friends now and we play better games than that.
Well, for me, I take tone police just like some of the other ones where it's, okay, well, if we're gonna go that way, then I'll just take the win and we're good.
Right.
That's part of the indifference too. I am indifferent to tone policing or to the other fallacy. Like,
well, that's because all the stuff that I know is down there. I've gone deep into those things. Like, it's like if it was a video game, okay, I've made these 47 exact same moves every time, and I always get stuck here. This is attempt number 57. I'm going to try something different, something that is different from the other ones. And then you find the thing that works or works enough that you can say, what was different about that? And then that's where your precision comes in. So yeah, you would be naturally averse to that because the deeper you go down that path, the less dopamine you have in your system and the less motivated you will feel. Because it is literally an isolating function of the brain where you need to isolate specific zones and unconnect them from the rest of your brain, which is an ability that is incredibly advantageous as a survival mechanism. But unless somebody is teaching it to you and explaining it ahead of time, it feels subjectively terrifying to explore. And I only did it because reality was a worse terror than that. And it was a good path for me by choice. Traitorous critic fallacy. The critic's perceived affiliation is portrayed as the underlying reason for criticism. Oh, you're just saying that because you're a Republican. You're just saying that because you're a filthy Democrat. You're just saying that because you're retarded. You're just saying that because you're homophobic. You're just saying that because you're racist. Traitorous critic fallacy. I'm not going to listen to a word you say because there was a picture of you 25 years ago, and there's been enough prominent Democrats and Republicans in pictures like that that I can say that without picking sides, because that's where I choose my examples from. Ones where I can't pick sides because I want people to look into this and see, damn it, another example of both of these sides being filled with crap people. It's not either or. It's the same crap. Appeal to authority. Yeah, the CDC said it. It's true. The president said it. Or the appeal to, I guess, the opposite of authority. The person who doesn't like the president that I like said it. You pick your poison at that point. Appeal to accomplishment. Yeah, you just did that because your parents gave you money. You didn't have the same thing I did. Your accomplishment is tainted. Accomplishments of the proposer, yes. The the courtier's reply? I'm just going to read the description. That one's giving me grief. A criticism is dismissed by claiming that the critic lacks sufficient knowledge, credentials, or training to credibly comment on the subject matter. You're too stupid. You can't possibly understand how complicated that is. That's the You hear that in politics all the time too. They phrase that as doesn't have the political experience. Yeah, that's what a lot of people are trying to vote for. You keep destroying them in the press. Appeal to consequences. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at how bad it would be if we don't handle this. It would be too bad. No, we can't. Too much is at stake. We need to shut everything down. You need to take this shot 2 or 3 times. You need to mask up. You need to limit your activity, limit your travel, or else. I can say this now because it's already been coming out. Blood clots and insurance death data. That's the smoking gun. Insurance companies get paid to literally understand death better than any human being. They understand how, when, why, how often, what the odds are, what your medical profile is. If you want to know when you're going to die, do not ask a doctor. Ask a life insurance company. Ask a health insurance company. They study this for a living and they make money on it, which means they understand it well enough to predict it. So when those numbers change, their baseline averages change, something is wrong. And blood clots among a certain age, that data can't be ignored because it would cost those companies a lot of money. So they have to play it straight. Look to the people who get paid to get it right, really, if you want to know what's really going on. The CDC is not in charge of what is and isn't safe. They're the mouthpiece for what people should be told, so somebody in leadership thinks they won't make it worse. Or somebody in leadership thinks that they could make a lot of friends or repay a lot of promises by taking advantage of this situation. But the insurance companies, they have to get it right. That's all I'm going to say about that. Appeal to emotion. Yeah, manipulating emotions. Think of the children. Oh, dear God, won't you please think of the children? Children are legitimately in danger. There's usually not a shortage of people who are going to try and help that. Now, there's systems in place that go a long way to remove the children from those systems. But I would say that on the whole, even though the damage that those people do is incomprehensible relative to the size of their group, the number of those people relatively small compared to what is normally going on. So arguments phrased which lean heavily on the negative consequences need to do so in proportion. The death, I'm keep picking on COVID because now history's on my side and the numbers are, can't fight them anymore. Because all the money got made. Nobody cares. All the checks cleared. You got your shots. Maybe it helped some of you. I'm not saying it was a garbage product. I'm not saying it was safe as they said it was. I'm not saying the disease was as deadly as they said it was, or that people didn't die. But going by the numbers, that's where we get to appeal to fear, generating distress, anxiety, cynicism, or prejudice towards the opponent in an argument. Well, you combine that with the one right above it, which is the appeal to emotion in general. And now you've got, because you hate our children and want grandma to die, I'm going to think you're a bad person because you won't get that thing. And I don't even want to talk about studies that you're trying to talk about. The CDC said it. The president said it. They trust it. Facebook puts a fact checker on it. I have to believe it. Fallacy on fallacy on fallacy. And like I said, I could say it now. An overemphasis on the danger created a predictable response. And now it doesn't matter. Now you just apologize, and everybody who's in charge of arresting people was in on it. So a couple slaps on the wrist here, some things that get made public that don't really do anything, and everybody goes on and does the next thing, which, by the way, is Ukraine. This is a movie release schedule. This is a theatrical rollout. We've ended one saga and have entered the next one. And the goal of all these franchises is the same, is to make money. That's not to say that there aren't legitimate issues that are wrapped up in these things, but to say that there aren't large amounts of resources which have a very legitimate stake in how things turn out for their own personal benefit. You can't say those people aren't using those resources to their fullest extent, which is beyond the reach of many common people, to ensure that these events go the way they should go for them to continue to be successful, which is what any successful person does. You don't stop doing the things that made you successful. And if the thing that makes you successful is telling a story every few years so that your companies can produce things and your friends can get rich, and you can also do other things at the same time, which are legitimate, well, then who's really going to say you're doing any different than any other person in a position of authority who has cared more about themselves than the people they're trying to protect? And to be fair, it's our fault that there aren't more people like that, because I swear to God, if you're going down to who would I believe to give me a fair business deal? And there's a lot tied up in the concept of fair business deal. The terms are agreeable. The terms are mutually beneficial. Both sides will follow through. If that is the type of arrangement I want to set up, where I feel I'm getting an even shake and follow through, I can only pick one president out of the last 10 that I would say I want to be in charge of that. And I can also pick one president out of the last 10 who, when measured from that angle, is a guy who wants to do good business instead of a guy who wants to play ball. And his playing ball would interrupt my global narrative of, hey, we need to make this happen, and then this happen, and this happen. And then the world keeps going. Everyone's slightly miserable, but it doesn't burn down. We get richer until we die. Everybody wins. That's the status quo right now. And who's to say that the status quo isn't all bad? You know, we got running water. We got food, clothes, air conditioning, Amazon, streaming services, access to health and fitness. More of the world's getting electricity. We're still killing each other, but to be fair, we've been killing each other. Like, that's not new or old behavior. All the other stuff is changing. The humanity part is staying the same. So you can't really tie the killing and the violence to anything except the human condition. So if we remove the human condition from the experiment, because it's the same across every experiment, and you measure all the stuff that's changing, well, stuff's getting better. So that could lead one to believe that eventually the human condition will be put in a position where it is advantageous to not be a spineless, weak, angry, hurt, victimized, victimizing, tyrant, whomever, yelling angry person, because that gets you ahead this much in the short term. And maybe that sets you back 20 years in the future. And people only say that because they measure it by the end of life instead of the beginning, and say, yeah, it doesn't look big, but over time, we've really figured this out. This is not the way to be. We're not going to deal with you. You get rid of that shit in one generation. Why? Because the people who do it starve. They can't teach anyone else how to do it. So they change. And then everyone who's left, well, now they're the ones towing the party line. And then you can go too far, and you get camps. And so you got to keep it balanced. You can't just say, hey, it's enough for one of these to win over the other. No, it's always, you got to take the full trip. So you can't just toss the emotion out either. But you can abuse it to make people agree with you, which is the appeal to emotion. Appeal to flattery. Yeah, man, you look really great in that tie. I'm glad we're doing business on that business deal later. You know, oh, that's a smart round of golf, sir. You know, I'm up for review next week. How do I look for that promotion? I hear old Ed's been gunning for me. Who do you think does a better job, just between you and me? That sort of appeal flattery. Appeal to pity. Look at me. Look at how bad my situation is. Maybe it is. But you should listen to me because my situation's bad. No, I should listen to you and you're right. Your situation is bad. Maybe you're the one that made it bad. We haven't discussed that yet. Listening to you could be a one-way ticket to making my situation the same as yours. And then who's going to help us? Not you, because you're looking to me for help and you're telling me how to do it. Because I need to agree with you because you're so pitiful. No, that's bad logic. That's like it's putting the least competent person in the room in charge of the thing that's the most important, intentionally, not accidentally. Appeal to ridicule. Yeah, you just make it funny. Oh, he's so ridiculous. No, yeah, that guy's a clown. Who talks like that? I'm not even gonna listen to him. Makes me sick. Appeal to spite. Yeah, we've covered that in other ways. Judgmental language. Yeah, that's those little side jabs like you're such a derogatory human being. I feel just a mild unrest anytime I have to look at you because you're so soft on crime. Like that's just a judgmental language. If you're going to be judgmental and you want to use judgmental language, faster is better, by the way. Fast, honest, and innocent is the way to be judgmental. And accepting. You give someone a judgment and they're brave enough to respond, at least believe they're not lying. You can think they're avoiding once you get past that, but you got to start with the assumption that they're trying to tell you what they think is the truth, or at least part of it. Judgmental language is a good way to bring that out, actually. Makes people defensive. If you're wise, a judge, not a bad thing. But you have judges are like people. They can be good or bad. But this is in terms of the fallacy. So they're using the negative spin of this unintentionally. The poo-poo. Yeah, that's you just up. I'm turning my nose up at your idea. It's so beneath me. I'm not even going to consider it. I would get my brain dirty by even touching it. That's wishful thinking. Arguing for a course of action because it's fun to imagine. Wouldn't it be nice if we could all just, I don't know. Wouldn't it be nice if we were older? Then we wouldn't have to wait so long, you know? Let's plan for being older. That's a terrible example because you should actually do that. My plan to rip off that song backfired on me. Yeah. Crap, now I gotta find another example. I gotta go back. Wishful thinking. Oh, okay. Socialism. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody just went to work and shared what they didn't need? We should do that. Field nature. Judgment is based solely on whether the subject of judgment is natural or unnatural. Yeah, that's unnatural. That's not natural. I can think of some silly examples and some serious examples. I don't have my coin with me today, so I'll use one.
I've got a good one too.
Are you going to do the white woman with the black woman thing from 30 years ago? That's just unnatural.
No, I was just gonna say GMOs are bad. That's an appeal to nature.
So, yeah, they're just
But it's
GMOs.
false.
They're unnatural. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're terrible. Worst thing in the world. We should let them corn get eaten by those beetles when this gene makes the corn stronger. No. How dare you increase the yield of our grain crops by 350% per acre, allowing us to feed most of this nation at a fraction of the space it used to take the founding fathers, using far less manure, water, and other farm equipment, reducing the fuel of transportation, reducing the labor cost. Yeah, like, oh, how dare you?
But it's unnatural.
It's unnatural.
It's modified.
So
it's
are you.
not.
You're modified.
I'm a natural.
You're unnatural, yeah. If you want to go kindergarten with this, I'll go straight to the basement. You're unnatural. You're modified.
That'd be a good possible name for the group too. The Unnaturals.
That's an ad hominem.
You're unnatural. It's attacking the person,
There you
not the
go.
argument.
That's right. Appeal to novelty. Oh, wouldn't that be neat? Look at this great new thing that solves everything. Oh, it's brand new, it's shiny. A new kid on the block. That's appeal to novelty. I'm right because it's new.
That happens with marketing all the time. iPhones. The
Yeah.
new one is a fraction of a second higher, or a little. No, not yeah. Like they go from iPhone 6 to like SE to
Yeah.
6 point something to like, okay, it's new.
It takes 1 extra Newton to crack your screen. Oh, here we go. Speaking of which, appeal to poverty. Supporting a conclusion because the arguer is poor, or refuting it because the arguer is, well, that's just a bunch of rich people talk. Oh, you're just a bunch of poor white trash, or you're just a bunch of whatever. I'm not going to listen to you. You live in a trailer park. You're poor. That's an example of appeal to poverty. Appeal to tradition. That's the way we've always done it. Okay. Go, have fun. Appeal to wealth. Supporting a conclusion because the arguer is wealthy. Different. One is refuting, one is supporting. Same idea. We're going to
Scroll
listen
back up for me
What's that?
a little bit. Scroll back up a little bit. I want to look at the appeal to wealth and the appeal to poverty.
At the same time.
Yeah, and you can keep going. Like you don't have to pause for me.
Yeah, so it's supporting a conclusion because the arguer is poor. Or
the way my mind works, though, looking at those two.
I'm giving both examples at the same time. The person can be for or against the thing because the person is for, or for or against the thing because they're wealthy. Here, they're singling it out to support the position. Same thing though. Oh, that person's rich. He knows what to do. Okay, maybe.
Which is all irrelevant information. Fallacy.
Argument ad baculum. Appeal to the stick. Appeal to force. Appeal to threat. An argument made through coercion or threats or force to support position. Yeah, you see that one quite a bit. Anytime you see somebody yelling at another person for trying to speak, usually, now I can't make that generalization. My subjective experience from a very unbalanced and limited sample size, because most of these samples find me and I do not seek them. I have seen this example as a short woman with short hair yelling at someone who's trying to give a speech at a function. Many of those details change, but those seem to be the core elements that I've experienced. I'm sure many other examples exist that are not nearly so selective and narrowly defined, but those are good examples of ad baculum, argument ad baculum. Just no, I'm going to just shout over you and call you nasty names, call you, let's see, with the top 10 that I heard, which may differ.
Wouldn't it be simpler?
What's that?
Wouldn't it be simpler to just use physical force? Like that's something everyone understands.
Like would it be simpler? I like to see what's more common.
Yeah, aren't threats of force more common physically? Like
no,
this is right.
And yeah, it could be.
And you feel, and you well see the difference in what I'm saying, what I think you're saying, is that one is verbally trying to be aggressive and shout over, while the other one is trying to make the other person feel like they're in danger or threatened, like uncomfortable. And I think about that and a lot of, yeah, exactly. So coercion or threats of force. And that threat of force means I will force you to understand this. And I suppose I'm looking at the threat of force as credible, because everybody could think, anybody could feel uncomfortable by something, but that threat of physical force is clear and well defined. Somebody smaller can still threaten to punch somebody way bigger, but it's not gonna land the same.
Well, I think that the threats of force is being measured very narrowly. So I'm seeing a bias there on the word force. I view social pressure as a force as well.
Yeah, alienating somebody.
This person is giving a speech that's public, and this other person starts making these wild, angry claims very forcefully about the nature of their sexual morality, for example, by saying that they're objectifying them repeatedly and loudly publicly. That becomes coercion via, I am already threatening your reputation forcefully with this social pressure. And therefore, if you do not back down, this will continue. So that is a type of coercion that I see, and a a different kind of violence, a social violence, where the observer and where the two participants, one of them is not speaking to the person they're speaking to. They're speaking around that person so that other things will happen and make that person go away. So that's the type of coercion that I'm talking about with that example. Yeah,
The
you could also
example,
say, I'm going to kick your ass if you don't stop talking about my wife.
well, the example that Wikipedia took from the Standard Encyclopedia of Philosophy, I'll put it in the chat here.
Yes.
If you don't join our demonstration against the expansion of the park, we will evict you from your apartment.
Yeah.
So you should join our demonstration against the expansion of the park.
Legal force. There you go. Legal coercion. Bad consequence. It's not violent, but it's punitive. You see that a lot in government agencies. They call that, what do they call that? Shadow
I think
government.
the difference,
Shadow
that I'm seeing is that one is saying what you will do, while the other is being forceful. Like when you said that the attacking the reputation, to me,
So why is that not an active force to attack a reputation? Because a reputation.
Because it's just an attack. It's not a threat. It is the attack. Like you can threaten to do that, and I think that would apply to the fallacy. But with so many different fallacies and how they overlap, I think this, one saying the threat of violence is different, or the threats of force is different than actually forcing, or
Well, you could be threatening, you could be using force to threaten escalation of force.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it becomes relative. There's a
so then that's the point. Yeah, and I can accept that. And I can accept that. And yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Using force to threaten more force.
That's what I'm saying would satisfy your condition.
I'm thinking the threatening of escalation. Like if someone starts to shout at somebody else like that in the middle of the speech, questioning the sexual orientation, whatnot, all those I don't see as threats unless they say, I'm going to keep going if you don't agree with me.
So that's a different kind of measurement thing that I'm seeing going on here. That is, like I said, it's an unbounded measurement. It's measuring the spectrum at one point only. What I'm saying is that to confirm this type of thing, what you're saying is that once the force has happened, yes, you're saying that changes into a different thing. What I am saying is that you can look at force as more than one thing. You can look at it as a nested concept.
10.
An example is, say, smacking somebody once and telling them, if you don't do blank, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. You've used force on them, but you haven't used, they could say, I'm going to show you what it really means to use force on you by comparison. So now you have a choice.
But see, the smack, I don't think was the threat of force. The smack or the physical before the threat of the more physical, I don't think
that was just the environment the choice was framed inside.
Yeah, exactly. Saying I will
escalate.
Yeah.
So to ascribe to it a motivation or a measurement relevance is to deny that it is the environment itself. So you have to pick one or the other. That's a Heisenberg uncertainty thing. You can either measure something's position very accurately, or you can measure its direction very accurately. And the act of measurement changes the nature of the measurement, of the way the measurements work. And that's true in this case. So one of the things you run into, yes, when you try to measure things in opposing methods that are different to each other, but in the same function, that's when you have, that would be a very weird example of the closet argument that I used earlier, where there's an assumption baked into the question, but it's so technical that you really have to be breaking it down into the A's and B's and C's of language to see. It's like, because this is true, what does it mean when? So that was the deconstruct. That was a pretty good exercise, Tony. I like that one. That was really good. I think we're going to finish fallacies today. I still want to do biases. I got as much time on this as the next guy. Argumentum ad populum. A proposition is claimed to be true or good solely because a majority of many people believe it to be so. I used a gang example last time for a similar thing. If it's popular, it's bad. It's not necessarily good. If it's popular, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just popular. There's no morality aside from
A gang
popularity.
example. Yeah, we'll call it that in case nobody has seen it yet.
Look, we did it once. I covered it once. I don't need to make that emotional journey twice. Masochists who think they still have something to learn about self-reflection and the ethics of group coercion can go review that example because there's a lot of detail there. Association fallacy. Yeah, arguing that because two things share some property, they're the same. Yeah, it's oh, both of those things are red. I don't trust red things. Both of those people have the same dad. No good can come out of that household. Both of those people are Democrats. No, never met a good Democrat. Never.
I was about to say this is a good one that I would take political for. Like this is.
I never met a good Republican. That sort of thing.
Or sports.
Never met a good Trump supporter. Never met a good Trump supporter. Never been an honest Clinton supporter. You know, all these common things that have been said. Logic chopping fallacy, focusing on trivial details of an argument rather than the main point of the argument. That's the same. That's a fallacy by itself. So I'm going to ignore that one. We covered why that's wrong. You don't get to know what the main point of an argument is until both people have agreed to what the main point of an argument is based on the nature of communication. Same thing for relevance. The conversation is to determine relevance, which is another word for trivial. So that's bad. The bad one.
Yeah, those are the people that just want to argue.
Yeah. Ipsy Dixit, bare assertion fallacy. A claim that is presented as true without support, as self-evidently or dogmatically true, which you're allowed to do, but you have to say that's what you're doing. And they're challengeable by measurement. Because I said so, because that's how I understand it, because I've been through this more than you, are not accurate, sufficient explanations to this. If it is being challenged, it needs to be shown. And the person doing the challenging has to accept the measurement. That's the other thing. You make a challenge and somebody goes through the work of proving it, and then you ignore that. Well, you're the asshole. They tried to meet you halfway, and you were just trying to dick them around. We're coming up on time, so I've just got a few more of these to finish this little section. I'll go quick. Inferring why an argument is being used. You're just saying that to set me off balance. You're just saying that to be a jerk. You're just saying that to be misleading. Chronological snobbery. A thesis is deemed incorrect because it was commonly held when something else known to be false was also commonly held. Oh, how dare you believe the world is flat? Copernicus. Two way different sentences by adding that one word. That's an example of that. A genetic fallacy, somebody's origin rather than its current meaning or context. Yeah, that's not to say racial, that's different. Genetic meaning because it is from. Oak trees have this in common, therefore acorns must. That's an example of that. Because they have the same parent, this is true. Maybe it is. I'm entitled to my opinion. Yes, you are. But that's all that statement says. It proves nothing. You're entitled to your opinion, not mine or anyone else's. And if you're weighing intrinsic value on the weight of opinions, your total weight compared to the species is 1 divided by 7 billion. So that's how much I'm going to value the strength of your opinion. And I will collect several hundred opinions, which gives me a better weight against my own. And I will throw out the ones that are stupid, because you can tell when you compare them to each other and give them the weight they deserve, because the only way to do that is to remove yourself from it. The moralistic fallacy, factual conclusions from evaluative premises, making statements about what is on the claims about what ought to be. Yeah, no, we shouldn't do this because it ought to be this way. We should have fair hiring practices, so we need to unfairly structure this hiring to make sure that we only get these right boxes checked and measure human beings by things that make them less instead of more. No, but that's what that looks like. The naturalistic fallacy. It's the same thing in reverse. I'm looking for the easy example here. Inferring an impossibility to infer any instance from ought is generally is ought fallacy, as mentioned above. You know what? I'm just going to say it the way I said it before. It's the other thing in reverse. They could have just said that, but that's a fallacy unless it works, because reversing the time is one of the fallacies we covered. Straw man. Somebody gives you an argument, so you say, so you're basically just saying, and that means that, and therefore I am right. No. A straw man argument, and this is why people think these are common. You make a weaker position because you can't understand the one that you're being exposed to, and you're unwilling to understand that position because it would mean having to take the word of the person who is explaining it to you as true. So you have to make a copy of that argument, which you have to do on your own anyways to understand it. That's not optional. The only difference is the quality of your copy is strongly dependent on your willingness to take accurate measurements and corrections from the person who is telling you it looks correct or not. So the only correct use of the straw man argument is to cut out most of it, and you just say, this is your position, do I have it right? When they say yes in all points, you are as close to talking about the same thing as you can be. Then you move on. Just a few more. Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Well, there's like 20 data points up there. Must have been the snowstorm. Must have been that beehive that fell and stung that cow, tipped over the barn. That would explain all those dots. It's where you see a bunch of random nonsense and you try to find one common cause, which can be very difficult when you have a sea of information and what looks to be random nonsense is actually a common cause. So this sort of thing becomes very muddled with what I said earlier about the spike in blood clots for insurance baseline data for deaths following a rollout of a medical product that a lot of people took for free. So this Texas sharpshooter fallacy is also used to obfuscate. All right, it's buckshot, it's cover fire. It's the invasion of Ukraine, it's Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. There's other shit happening too. And if you fire this next to it, it all looks the same. The U2 appeal to hypocrisy, stating that a position is false, wrong, or should be disregarded because its proponent fails to act consistently in accordance with it. No, that's not correct. You can't say that the fat dietitian isn't giving good advice. However, you can say the fat dietitian is not following their own advice. A different way to say that is, you can judge an idea by its own standard. That is not the same thing as a person using their idea. If the idea says this is the way things work, and you take the way things work and apply it to that idea and the idea breaks, that is evidence of a fallacy or a bias. That is not evidence of challenging it improperly. Two wrongs make a right. If one wrong is committed, another wrong will rectify it. That's only true if you're traveling 180 degrees in the wrong direction. And two wrongs definitely won't make a right, because one wrong puts you wrong, and then the other wrong will put you right back. Two wrongs make a right. It's nonsense. People use it all the time, but usually it's reversed. But what about that guy? But why do I have to? But it's not fair that. But those people have, that's two wrongs make a right, and you feel like you're one of the wrongs. It's harder to see when you're inside it, but that's what it looks like. And finally, the vacuous truth. A claim that is technically true but meaningless in the form of no A and B has C. There is no A and B. For example, claiming that no mobile phones in the room are on when there are no mobile phones in the room. All right. I don't have any leprechauns down here that I know about, which means I don't have any leprechaun gold. That's a vacuous truth. None of the ants in my house have ever done physics. It's a vacuous truth. So anyways, that finishes the fallacies. So the list of biases is actually a lot shorter, and we'll cover that on Thursday. And I'm hoping the evening time slot will be a little better for the other people, because I know the during the day one is tricky for them. I appreciate you always being here for that, Tony.
So we're good for this week, Thursday?
Yeah, I don't know if you caught the time. It was subtle. It was instead of 8:30 to 10, I wanted to do 8 to 9:30 so I could wind down before bed. Because I'm up at 5 to go to work. And talking gives me way too much energy. Like I'm gonna be pumped up for hours. Like this is me on moderate energy. You should see me at full power though. Oof.
I can do. Actually, I don't know what I can do. 8:30 is fine. I mean,
Okay.
I was gonna say we could move it earlier if you wanted, but I should wait until I actually get on the road and whatnot to make claims like that. Who knows what's gonna happen?
Yeah, I think we'll have a bigger crowd in the evening too, so there might not be as much perceived pressure on yourself to be the balance if you have any of that already. I don't think you should. I could.
Yeah, my thing. Remember when we started? My thing was not talking. That's why I left my mic muted, because there's always things like when I said the fallacy of the people that just like to argue.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a that's always present. You know, and I'm always aware of all the little things that I disagree with, but most of them don't really matter, and they have nothing to do with the meaning that's being conveyed anyway. So for me, no, we're good. Like Mondays are great for me to grow and expand and do more and get you more into my mind and see how I work and whatnot. But Thursdays, we're good.
It's
like,
I mean, not Thursday. When there's participation, and I can't say I don't appreciate it, because the biggest feedback that I get that people might not recognize is the body language feedback. For the people who are on camera, I can tell when I'm interesting. I can tell when I'm boring. I can tell when I'm not making sense based on the reactions, which means I have the opportunity to correct, which I don't have when I have a sounding board, or I don't have a sounding board. I just go and hope I'm getting it right. So that I appreciate, because it makes me a better speaker to be able to observe an audience in real time. But having said that, I know you're bumping up on time. So is there anything you wanted to ask, say?
Nope, I'm good with everything that came through today, and interjected a little bit more than normal. And I've read some extra on the pages, or skimmed some pages. I'm thinking the one that we talked about, if I remember it later, I'll send it to the dojo to see what see if any of them find it interesting too. The threat of force versus using force as the to threaten force, or just a lot of nuances between energy exchanges. There we go.
Yeah,
that's my word.
Between environment and what's the word? Motivation.
Motivation.
The environment is I just slapped you. The motivation is you don't want me to beat your ass.
In men's group tonight, we're talking about the Will Smith thing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. But I've been talking about that on Facebook all day. It's giving me great social media outreach. I'm loving it. Staged,
but
Will Smith, I don't see how anybody can argue that it's not. Like, I don't know for sure, and I'm not gonna even, like, I'm indifferent to if it was staged or not.
Yeah.
Or I'm at the position that if it was staged, that might be worse. But the fact is, he won an Oscar. Like, how do you say you can see it in his face how real it was when he wins an Oscar for being able to do the opposite of that?
What I did was, what I saw that swayed me to one or the other was somebody had taken still frames of the actions before, during, and after, and compared those still frames to common techniques that actors and stuntmen use to not damage each other but look like they are. And there was even a little grin freeze frame before the serious faces came on from both of them. So it was like a, did we get it? Okay, serious face.
Micro expressions.
So there's a case to be made. I'm not going to say either way. I will say that if they come out with a movie together and there's any sort of hype about will they be able to look past the differences, it was 100% staged, and everybody who doubted me should give me money.
Oh, speaking of which, we got to talk Bitcoin at some point.
Okay.
my dad has money. I think I mentioned it like a month ago or whatnot, and I've been doing a little thing, but we'll get to that later. I gotta get out of the parking garage before 5 o'clock. I gotta pay 5
$38,000 is
bucks.
probably as good as he's gonna do unless something major changes.
What do you mean 38,000?
That's the price of per single Bitcoin. If it's tied to what I think it's gonna do in the future, I think that would be the point I would buy in. It wouldn't dip lower than that anymore.
Oh,
That's my guess. I'm not a stock guy. But the great
my dad's a
correction
stock
already
guy.
happened. And I walked you guys through that on Facebook, the when, why, and how.
Actually, you know what? I think you putting together a Bitcoin seminar, I could get people involved with that.
Maybe
'Cause
I'm
I
not
could get-
educated enough, so I would say here's how I did the Bitcoin trick.
Well, I was thinking if we made it a half hour, then it's not about being educated. Really?
Bitcoin is made from energy. They use computers to solve math and it generates Bitcoin. You can't print more. That's the first 30 seconds. The Bitcoin thing that I predicted, here's how I predicted it. It was social, it wasn't economic. The information that I had was 2020, directly before the election, the price of Bitcoin was $12,000. Immediately after the election, 5 days in, the price of Bitcoin is $36,000. This goes and this goes and this goes. And then this is what triggered it, the next piece of information I had. So I saw the price jump after the election, which told me that people who understand money understood the significance of Biden's election over Donald Trump and converted their cash into Bitcoin, which drove the price up triple. So then I hear, that was information one. Information two is all of a sudden Biden comes out of nowhere and starts talking about Bitcoin mining in Russia and how it's going to destabilize the market, which is not a thing. Not how Bitcoin works. But the market doesn't.
Yeah, I know that much.
It isn't a thing. So the price of Bitcoin goes down. Why? What just happened? We just had 30% inflation.
Get ready
How
to
are you
go.
going to get rich people their money back except by creating a social backlash against a certain product?
One's right there. Find the other one.
Valuing it. Everybody who's in the know puts their money into it. And then not 7 days later, Biden comes out and says, oh, we're going to take care of that problem we talked about. Never even happened. We're fine. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then the price of Bitcoin goes to $38,000, $39,000, and $40,000. So what happened was everybody who had money put it in Bitcoin and tripled it, which got them ahead. And then after the COVID thing was hurting everybody's pocketbooks, Biden says, okay, I'm going to say something bad about Bitcoin. Price goes down. They convert their devalued money into Bitcoin. Then the president takes it back and their devalued money gains the value that it was artificially losing by having the perception of Bitcoin altered. So that's how you manipulate the price of a thing without manipulating the price of a thing and getting all your process. That's all I know about Bitcoin. I predicted it. The price based on those conclusions of human nature. So I didn't know anything about Bitcoin that was special.
Your name, Riley?
The players.
All right.
I
But anyways,
think
gotta go.
it'll work out. Yeah, like we'll work that out, and I'll see you in the dojo.
All right, brother. Love you.
Love you too, man. Good vibes.